Hey everyone, before we start, can you please do us a quick little favour? If you enjoy the podcast, please just leave us a little review on Apple Podcast or wherever it is that you are listening to us. Do it now if you can, because it helps us so much to keep on growing this podcast. Thank you ever so much.
Now then everyone, this is the Wedding Mavericks podcast, a podcast for wedding photographers and videographers who want to build successful and sustainable businesses. My name is Jules and I'm joined by Lindsay, and on this episode we are discussing the 10 tips for a more successful wedding day. So thanks for spending a little bit of your time with us. We're seeing the number of listeners go up every week now, and we're excited to be able to grow the community around this podcast. So thank you, and let's do it. So we're going to be... Who's back again.
Yay. Oh, I have missed it.
Yeah?
Yeah, the last couple of weeks. Yes. But such is life with children and other bits and bobs. It's sadly just not always possible. But at least thank goodness you're here to keep things moving.
Yeah, but I don't like doing them on my own, because it's... I suppose if you're doing like a YouTube video, you're doing more of a tutorial based thing.
Yeah.
It's not too bad talking to the camera, but when it's intended, like we've intended this podcast to be more conversational. It started off as interviews, and then it's come to kind of us having a chat. The ones where it's just me by myself, it feels, it don't feel right.
Oh.
But
well, it's still very good to listen to. I enjoy still listening to it. Yeah, not playing with the figures, the listening figures there. By admitting that I listened to it. Yeah.
2 listens, both from Barnsley in Yorkshire.
Okay, so.
Yeah. So, I mean, talking about things as they are, just general stuff. I think the last time I recorded a podcast, I just went straight into it. I didn't really talk about what we'd been doing. So we'd done a wedding, hadn't we, in, I said it was Plymouth, but it wasn't actually Plymouth. I think it had a Plymouth postcode. That's what threw me. It was near Bournemouth. Same thing. They're both fucking other end of universe from where we live.
From where we live in Middle England.
Yeah. I bet, like, listeners in America, they'll hear us talk about, like, sort of a 6-7 hour drive, and they'll be like, that's just from one state to another or whatever. Whereas for us, like the idea of a 7 hour drive, I mean, we couldn't really have done it any other way. The trains are shit in this country, especially at the moment, because there's just strikes all the time in there. And planes, there ain't enough airports in more remote parts of the country like that. I think you technically could get a plane near to there. It'd cost you a fortune. You'd probably have to go by about 3 different airports. And
I think it was, I'm sure, so Southampton was the closest. So we would still had to have, perhaps hired a car and still looked at sort
it'd
of
cost a
onward
fortune,
travel
wouldn't
from
it?
there.
And it'd still taken same amount of time, and it'd just been a load of hassle.
And I think probably that's a point, actually, because for sort of professionals working in America and perhaps other European countries, that travel by air will certainly be factored into the price, but also then the consideration of hire cars or sort of a driver or taxis or anything like that. Whereas I guess we don't sort of really naturally, or we don't as a team, we don't sort of naturally think about that. We just think, we'll be driving to that.
Yeah, we actually factor. We have been factoring in for the last couple of years. The price includes travel and accommodation, because we put a price up so that if we had a wedding that was a few hours away, we wouldn't be losing any money by having to get a hotel and pay for the travel. But at the same time, it's the time aspect of it. I mean, we did a wedding. We stayed over the night before in the weirdest hotel. I mean,
I forgot about that.
This hotel was like partially stuck in a time zone. And then it had like these modern bits to it, but like from everything from the room to like it had this sort of leisure facility, swimming pool, sauna, steam room, because there wasn't many hotels to stay in. So it sounds like we had like a fancy hotel, but it was the only one nearby, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Other than staying in like a weird kind of sort of like room over a pub or something.
Yeah.
And it was like just literally, it was like walking into the 1970s, going into this swimming pool and sauna. Like everything was just exactly as it would have been in the 70s, including the lock. Anyway,
yeah,
boring shit. But
it was no, but it was because I think there was us and 3-4 other guests.
Oh
in
yeah,
the hotel.
it was a ghost town hotel.
Yeah.
We were joking that it was going to be like some sort of zombie apocalypse movie where everybody's already a zombie in the hotel. There's just us, and the zombies are gonna try and get us in the middle of the night. Lindsay wants
the
sleeping.
chair up against the door handle. Yeah. Anyway,
so that was that, and then we drove back the night of the wedding.
Gosh.
So at the moment, I've got a bad back because my back went in the middle of the wedding, and literally by the end of the wedding, I found this like little mezzanine area that you couldn't be seen at, and I was just lied out on this mezzanine area. Lindsay's like, just grab 5 minutes here and stretch your back, and then we're trying to like get through the wedding, and then we had like a 7-hour drive back through the night. We got back at 4 o'clock in the morning, and that was I mean, it wasn't. I'm not complaining, but it was.
And I think we made the decision we were coming home just because we didn't. We didn't want to be away from the kids as it were all weekend because we'd already
had to go on the Friday.
That's right, yeah. So we saw them Friday morning, and then didn't want to sort of be away the whole weekend. And then just as kind of thinking we'd hit some traffic issues, that's it was such a long journey on the way down, wasn't it? Because we'd hit some traffic on the way down there. So then thinking, we have bumped into that on Sunday. But anyway, we wouldn't normally do a 7-hour
drive
journey home after a full day's wedding.
And then last weekend we had a wedding. There was I had a local photo wedding. That was like straightforward because it was fairly laid back stuff. And, it was in Leeds, so it was just like 15-20 minute drive up the road, and a venue we've shot before, and we kind of knew the couple a little bit. So that was fine. And now we've got a little bit of a break, a few weeks before the next wedding.
Yeah.
And God, the stack of editing, just off the scale, isn't it? But we'll get there. What's your editing like, guys? You imagine if you're anything like us, it's. I don't feel stressed by it anymore. It's almost just like every day is like, right, as much as you can chip away at.
Yeah.
And it's just an ever chipping away process.
Trying to remember your own advice as well, isn't it?
Because remember, actually take a bit of time out.
Yeah, exactly, and just try and kind of proportion what you can understand, what you can physically manage on a day-to-day basis without, life itself being part and parcel of that. I remember the last one that we did together, a big part of what we were talking about was just trying to be kind to yourself when you're trying to manage such a heavy sort of backlog of the editing, but still keeping things ticking over, and that still remains.
So today we are going to be giving you some tips, 10 tips. I believe we said 10 tips, because that's the cool thing to do, isn't it? Like on these podcasts and YouTube videos and stuff, it's 10 tips, 5 tips, never 2 tips, never 50 tips, always 10 or 5. It's like a manageable number, but enough so that you can be asked to tune in, because we're not like saying, hey, there's just this one thing we're going to tell you, and you're like, I don't want one thing.
Yeah.
I want 10.
100 tips.
100 tips. See you next week. So,
10.
We're going for 10.
Yes.
Now, within these 10 tips, let's just context it all up. Okay, so in terms of like improving the way that things go for you on a wedding day, and after, how your images will come out, how your films will come out, and how you feel in terms of your confidence and your skill level and stuff. There's different things, you can spend money on equipment, so you buy better cameras and new lenses and this light and this audio recorder and all that sort of thing. And you can buy presets or LUTs. You can even like go on workshops and courses and things to practice your skills. And they'll all get you results, but sometimes the best changes and improvements that we can make in our business and as a photographer or a filmmaker are the simple and easiest to implement ones, and they don't cost us anything. And that's really where we want to focus on today, and that's what we're going to be talking about. And these things don't get talked about as much. No. Probably because they're not as exciting, and they can't be sold to you as a solution, by people offering education or products. So, that's why they're probably not talked about as much. But believe us, by taking action on the points we're going to discuss today, our weddings, our weddings have become less stressful. And I would say that by doing these things and implementing these things into our workflow and our wedding days, before and after, we've kind of made the biggest improvements to our images and our films and our relationships with the clients, and also like how we feel about approaching the wedding day, and then how easy we find the wedding day itself.
Yeah. So I think then a good place to kind of start on our list of 10 would be to kind of take a little bit of a step back to what things you can do or what you can consider sort of outside of the wedding or pre-wedding day, if you like. A huge sort of part then of making sure that things run smoothly on a wedding day, I think can begin with setting expectations.
Absolutely.
Great
expectations.
And I think that works just as well on both sides. So both for the couple, from you as a professional, but also by us listening to perhaps the ideas that the couples have and the things that are of significance to them. And
because it's their wedding day.
Absolutely.
It's not your wedding day. It's our wedding day.
Absolutely. It's their Pinterest.
Their Pinterest board wedding. No, we don't get many of them, thankfully.
But, things that you could do then, look through previous galleries that you've taken for different wedding clients. Maybe you can straight away think of some wedding clients or a venue that might be similar to the couple that you're dealing with. See if there are any, and of course this is something you could do in discussion with them. See if there's any of yours that they've favorited, they've kind of liked along the way. They've asked to see certain galleries, of a bit more that they might have seen a little bit of a snippet of on social media or something like that.
Yeah, so I mean, with that, when I noted that down, it was about, obviously the couple that you're going to be shooting for on that wedding, but it was also about, sometimes if I go back to a gallery, like I might be looking for an image that we've shot, and it could be years ago, and I'm sort of scrolling through, and you can see on like most of the online galleries, they'll have like favorited them, and you see that like the couple, so whoever that was, they favorited certain photos, and you look at them and you think, that's not what I would have thought would have been their favorite photo. Do you get what I mean? So like, we all take these bangers, don't we? These like, amazing portrait in the sunset, all this sort of thing. And we think that because that's obviously what we're trying to show on our portfolio or whatever. It might, well, not all of us, but it might be whatever your thing is, that's what you're trying to kind of show. And then it'll be like a photo that's just really not one that you just took a photo, and it'll be like a moment that wasn't well lit and wasn't well composed, but you kind of included it in the gallery anyway because you thought, it's a moment. And they favorited those ones, and they're the ones that they post on social. Yeah. Sorry, I butted in.
No, that's okay.
I've done my thing. I butted in.
No, it's okay.
Shut the fuck up, Joe.
It's all right. I won't come back. No, I think sometimes you can be surprised by, like you were just saying, you can feel a bit surprised perhaps by some of the ones that you might see them sort of favourite. So in terms of you trying to think, well, I've listened to kind of their ideas, I've learned a bit about the couple and their style and things like that. But really what you're trying to get to is getting a bit of an insight and understanding what are the images that are really going to matter to them.
Yeah, to couples in general.
Yeah, and actually, and perhaps this is just from our experience, perhaps this is because of the style and the way in which we like to capture people's stories, you know, you might be surprised because it's not usually the epic editorial style images that you might have thought, you know, you've been really pleased with on the day, and you thought, oh, that's right, that's a bit of a banger, that one, that's a good one. But instead it ends up, you know, it can be the ones where actually, you know, from your kind of critique perspective, you think, well, the light wasn't quite right on that one, you know, or the composition could have been slightly better. But no, for them, it could have been this really meaningful moment. It could have been that image of grandma or granddad, you know, playing with the granddaughter, playing with the children at the wedding, or just a private moment between the two of them. Like somebody, you know, Hannah and Sammy, one of our recent weddings, Hannah's mum got in touch yesterday, I know, and we did the film on their wedding, and it's occurred to her that she doesn't have a still image of just her and her daughter, or in a particular moment that she wanted to capture from the day of her and her daughter, and she's asked us if we could pull a still from the film for that particular image. Now, it's not, you know,
we don't typically do that, by the way.
No, but there are other moments, and there will be a professional set of photographs and images where there were formal group shots taken and individual shots. However, from the kind of screen, the moment on screen that she's sort of highlighted that she wants it from, you wouldn't kind of necessarily typically think, oh, that's the one that she wants to kind of cherish forever, but that's the one that she's highlighted. So, you know, bear that in mind. It's all well and good. You know, I think it's too easy to maybe kind of put yourself in that frame of mind where you're thinking it's got to be perfection. It's got to be nailed on every single time. Lighting, composition, where I'm stood with them, the location, what's in the background. It doesn't have to be. Think of it on that human level. It's those kind of key, the more kind of understated moments, I guess.
Yeah.
Sometimes for people.
Understated is a good way of putting it, yeah.
Thank you. If you can, of course, technically get that shot right, get that spot on, and you're happy with that, of course, that's great. But please don't forget, weddings aren't about what makes it for the editorial cut, if you like. It's about the moments.
Yeah, and there will be couples that do want that.
Yeah.
And there'll be particular photographers they gravitate towards because of that. But even those couples will still potentially, you know, really cherish images that you didn't really expect.
Yeah.
So it's good to have that in mind,
yeah,
and be approaching the wedding day in that way, and having that, and making sure that you try to get those moments.
Yeah. That's
probably going to make you more successful.
Yeah.
In the long run. Mm-hmm. As a you know, a wedding photographer, not necessarily as, you know, photographer of the year. You might not be winning no grab that fucking moment award, because I don't think it exists. I mean, there are, like, obviously documentary wedding photography awards, but I mean, they're usually creative in some way, that those wins. But we're talking about just real, like, expecting them to really want that image, but it's one of their favourites. So just remember that.
Yeah. So that kind of understanding where you're both sort of coming from. So as well as managing their expectations, go a little bit deeper into exactly what things are important to them. What do they regard as something that's going to be meaningful, combined with what sorts of things are they looking at, kind of favouriting and things like that. And a good way to do that, and I know that's what you're going to talk about next, is thinking about the questionnaires or consultations that you're going to have with those clients.
Yeah. So it's about knowledge. If you've got not only knowledge of shooting weddings for a while, and obviously if you're new to this and you haven't done that many, then you're what we've just talked about there about the moments is actually really important to hear, because I know that when everyone starts out, what they're consuming, because what they're consuming is what they see in people's highlights, profiles, websites, Instagram. They're looking at people's highlight moments and they're thinking that makes a good photographer, a good wedding photographer, and that's what I'm gonna go to a wedding. And I'm saying this from experience. I'm gonna go to a wedding. I'm gonna create banger portrait, I'm going to get this moment, I'm going to do this with it, and I'm going to do a fancy, use my phone to reflect the floor so it looks like the fucking lights on the ceiling. Great. Looks lovely, looks amazing. But that might be an amazing photo, but it's those moments we're talking about. And you only get those moments by listening to the couple, understanding the couple, and also understanding what previous couples you've worked with really treasured. So in terms of the questionnaires and consultations, these can be really handy to get to know your couple so that you can understand their personalities, what might be important to them. Also their like family makeup, because everybody comes as lots of like blended families these days, or they might already have kids together. So understanding that, a couple that have already got kids, either together or from previous relationships, or a couple, they're going to be very different to a couple who like their cats, for instance. And that's not like being disrespectful to a couple that like their cats. It's just that if they like their cats or they've got a dog and they're really into their dog, then that's what might be important to them. Like, it might be important to know how important their dog is to them, and the dog might be coming to the ceremony. Yeah, or they might be making an appearance at the wedding.
Yeah, play a part in the day.
Knowing these things is actually going to give you a lot of insight into what they're going to appreciate when they look back on their wedding photos. Yeah, so you might take a load of really good wedding photos, and the one that they really liked was the one that was like, dog were on it, but dog were going nuts and we're not staying still, but the dog's on it. And it might be the one where they're chasing after the dog. Dog's running around, they're chasing after the dog. Stupid examples, I know, but I'm trying to give you some that's what I'm trying to put in context. And you would understand this if you'd done questionnaires with them and you'd had consultations and found out a bit more about them and what makes them tick. So, as well as kind of understanding them and their personalities, which you do through consultation and questionnaires, we also get to understand a bit more about the wedding and the locations and the timings. So we want logistics. We want to know the timings. We want to know the locations and who will be doing things and who will be part of certain things, and travel plans, not just for the couple themselves, but also the wedding guests. And this is because, what if the way that they're traveling is pertinent to the story that you're going to be telling, pertinent to them, and you get this by asking questions. So if they put down, we're using a vintage bus, maybe granddad who's died were a bus driver. And I'm just giving you, again, a silly example that might be true. It's asking questions and being inquisitive about these things that might help you to get photos that will be really special to them, or video clips that will be really special to them, and including that in their memories. Locations, asking about locations. It's good to know locations of where things are happening. Obviously, you want to know where the ceremony's happening or where the reception's happening, but maybe they've chosen their venue or their locations for a reason. Ask questions about this. So as well as logistics, consultations and questionnaires are good for understanding personality stuff. And understanding what type of photos they like. So they might book you for your style, as in what you show on your website, Instagram, etc. But, do they really know what's involved in that? So it's good to, while you're doing your consultations, and maybe even somewhere on your questionnaires, explain that how you work, how you get those epic portraits where you've got your drone up in the air and people are lying on the floor and taking a picture of them lying on the floor in their wedding dress. So if they like that photo, explain exactly how you got it. And make sure that they understand that, so that on the wedding day, you're not like, right, okay, I just want you to lie down on this gravel now in your wedding dress. And they're like, what? Fuck off. Do you know what I mean? And they're like, I didn't know that's how you got that. Because some people really just won't understand this stuff. And that's quite an extreme example. But, we've worked, me and Lindsay can definitely say we've worked alongside photographers who have a particular style of doing photo portraits, and will spend a good hour, on doing the couple's portraits, which from our perspective is too long. We wouldn't ever do that, and we definitely wouldn't want to book a photographer for our wedding that did that. But I think sometimes couples will see a portfolio and they'll see images and they'll be like, yeah, I want that. It looks amazing. and they don't realise what impact that's going to have on their wedding day, and what they're going to be, what's going to be expected of them in order to get that. And maybe as a photographer, you're like, well, that's what it takes. You know, it's going to take me this long to set these shots up, and that's what they've booked me for. So I've got to deliver what they've booked me for. But because you didn't explain that, and because you didn't understand what their expectations were, and they didn't understand what your expectations were, that can be a bit of an issue. And that's why consultations and questionnaires before the wedding day are so important.
Massive. Yeah.
And it isn't just about these things either. It's also good to kind of, for preparing for the wedding day, so it goes smoothly with these consultations and questionnaires. So things like, are they supplying you with a meal? That can be something that, you know, you don't necessarily need to put it in a contract that you must be supplied by a meal, because let's be honest, how many people read contracts through? Right? They should, but they don't. So it going in your contract won't necessarily make it remembered. Whereas we put in our questionnaire, are you supplying us with a meal? And this prompts them to do it, to actually supply us with one, without us saying we must be supplied with a meal, because that won't be our vibe.
And that's not where we're coming from. And even you can actually, not a suggested answer as such, but where there's that question in the box that they would fill in, there's an explanation from us that just means that before we get there on the day, we know whether we need to just have an awareness of where we could just get a couple of sandwiches or something through the day, rather than it feeling like it's an awkward thing of, well, we haven't asked them and they haven't said and I don't know, and then it comes to the break when they're having their wedding breakfast and you're, you know, sitting there, and we've done it many a time, haven't we? And that's why we ended up putting the question in the questionnaire, when you sit there and nothing comes, and then you think, oh my gosh, I've been on the go already for sort of 9 or 10 hours and I've not had anything to eat. And if I'd have known that there wasn't anything there, I could have sort of gone and got something, because it all falls back into, you know, you kind of looking after yourself on the wedding day. So it's kind of, it doesn't have to be a big deal, and
not
it's
wanting
just
to bother them with it. And
oh gosh, no.
So just having this in place, thinking about it before the wedding day and having that in your questionnaire, it removes you stressing about it. Because let's be honest, we you know, whether you've been doing weddings for like a few months or a few years, we all do the same thing. Every wedding, it's like, you know, if you're working alongside someone else, it's like, do you know if we're getting fed today? It's always the question, and you hopefully you're laughing listening to that, because we all know that's the question. You know, it's all, there's always this ambiguity, and we just wanted to remove that ambiguity, didn't we? So that's something that you can do, and then you know, also questionnaires can help you to help educate them and plan their timeline and what they're wanting to do with it. So think about things like the first dance and what time evening food's been served. Putting that on the questionnaire as a what time is this happening? Does it really freaking matter what time the first dance or the evening food's been served? No, it doesn't. But you know, by putting that, if they weren't already thinking about the timeline, they will be now, because you've put it on there. And you're helping them to structure how that's going to work. So let's say they want to do sparklers or fireworks, you know, depending on the time of year, the timings are going to be all over the place with that. And if you want things to happen in a timely fashion so that you're not working way beyond what you've agreed in terms of like your contracted hours and like what time you're willing to or would like to stay till, because nobody wants to stay till 11 o'clock at night unless you've put that as part of your package and you're getting paid for it. You know, that's fine. If you stay till the end, if that's what your thing is, that's cool. But for most people that we work with and most weddings that we do, you know, first dance, you know, half an hour to an hour after first dance, we're gone, because we've got what we need. And if you haven't made this clear and haven't communicated this prior to the wedding, that can be really awkward, can't it, trying to leave?
And I think you've got to bear in mind as well, we're talking about what some might regard when it comes to weddings sort of here in the UK. I guess I don't want to use the word traditional, but one particular format of a wedding day is that you will go from ceremony, drinks reception, wedding breakfast in which there might be some speeches. Then there'll be the evening during which there might be a cake cutting and a first dance. That is one type of format of a wedding. Yeah. Don't forget,
there are lots of
different ones as well. And when you extend that beyond the UK and you think about overseas,
all the different traditions and all the different cultures.
Absolutely, yeah. So, which is why
it's important.
Those things are absolutely important, yeah, because you know, it might be something as simple as a cake cutting. It might be, let's think back to the Danish English wedding that we had at the start of the year. There were all these little traditions, all these little things, nuances that we didn't know about that were extremely important to the family because they were very traditional, and they were all occurring during the sit-down meal.
Yeah, and if we would normally be potentially off in another room.
Yeah.
We weren't. But
we weren't as it happened, thankfully, because a number of these things were quite sporadic as well and spontaneous. So we had to kind of just be ready to, you know, having, thanks to the bride, having had that prior knowledge and understanding that during the meal there will be X, Y, and Z that normally takes place. Not at this time, and this time, but normally these things happen, and here's what the trigger will be for those things happening. So
how would you know that if you've not communicated?
Would you know? Absolutely. So it keeps you on your toes. So it's important, please, approach it. If you're using a CRM like we do, like Studio Ninja, then your questionnaire will have a particularly set format, okay? What I would say then is just be aware that sometimes, you know, we haven't yet experienced this, but I have seen it on some of the chats and some of the groups sometimes where people are thinking about how they sort of reference particular questions within the questionnaire. If you are working with a couple where there are different sort of faiths or religions or traditions that are going to be incorporated into that day, please just think about how the kind of the language that you might use, the kind of tone in which you approach that with, and just perhaps be a little bit more open-minded, but open to kind of how certain things might be phrased. But ultimately, you know, that questionnaire, that consultation, that is key, isn't it?
It's key.
It's key. So that was point number 2.
Yeah.
Number 3 then on our list of 10.
Bit countdown. I don't know what countdown's got to do with list of 10, but it just came into my head.
Maybe if we got to the last one. But so number 3, shot list then. Not just knowing what the set list of group shops are, but actually thinking about here, maybe you've got some notes on your phones of particular locations around the venue or venues for that day that the couple might have mentioned to you. You might have notes on things, certain elements of the day or certain details that they want you to be able to get that you've already kind of, based on that conversation, that consultation that you've had with them, you've already kind of noticed about that venue, or you've noticed about the way in which they've styled their particular day. So you've sort of thought to yourself, oh, I can see them setting that up now. I'm going to come back to that later. Yeah. Because when that's all set up and ready and that's completely finished, I know they're going to really want to see that.
But even just like taking it a step back from that, if you are quite new to this and you haven't photographed that many weddings and you've not been to tons of weddings, you might not even, it's a busy day. So even just having a basic list on you of like, get a photo of the bouquet, get a photo of the buttonholes, get a photo of the cake, get a photo of the dress and the shoes, you know, if that's your style, it might not be your style. I wish we could stop photographing shit that's not, people aren't wearing. Anyway, that's my own bugbear, and I need to work on that. But I'm not photographing the dress hung up, fuck's sake. Fucking wear it. Anyway, that's just me. I still do these things.
You kind of remember an experience you had there quite recently, Joe.
I just prefer people wearing things. I think it's like, you know, I don't see what you're going to do with the photo of the dress. Not like, hey, this was my wedding dress. Yeah, wear it. Anyway, sorry, Lindsay, I just put it in. But what I mean is like just having a list of stuff so that like through the day, you're not, if you're new to this and it doesn't just kind of roll naturally for you, it's all right to have a little aide memoir if it's on your phone. You can just refer to it and be like, rather than like getting to the edit and being like, oh fucking hell, I didn't take a picture of like mum. Oh, I forgot the bride.
Oh God, it's a bad day.
Yeah, a bad day. I haven't got one picture of the bride.
It's a bad short day if you've forgotten the bride.
No, but I have forgotten to take a picture of the bride on her own on many of occasions, you know, because I just think it's not about you, it's about both of you. But
I'm telling that to some brides. But yeah, absolutely. It's good to kind of have something there that's going to make sure that's just going to prompt you at different times in the day, make sure you don't miss anything out. But don't be rigid in that either. If you've got a short list, if you've got something to just help jog your memory as you're going through the day, keep you ticking over with thinking, yeah, got that. It's nice just to be able to check that off in your mind as you go through the day, but don't be so rigid about it as well. There's going to be things that happen more spontaneously through the day, and there will be moments that happen that you couldn't possibly have written down in a list to remember to get. You know, I talked about grandma, granddad playing with the grandchildren earlier on. Well, that's not going to be in a shot, is it? I mean, that's pretty staged. If you know if
hey,
the couple,
little girl, come over here and play with this old man. Oh shit, it's not your granddad.
Stop it. If the couple say, yes, can you get something so choreographed as to that? No. Those just, you know, if you're doing this for a living anyway, you are naturally, I would expect, going to be someone that's quite attuned to just noticing around the room, around the place, nice moments that occur between guests, whether that's family, whether that's wider sort of wedding party guests that are there. You're going to notice that sort of thing. So definitely have your shot list there. Good to prompt you, but think outside the box as well. Don't be too rigid with it. Of course, as you become more experienced, a lot of the stuff that we've kind of talked about already, you're probably at a stage where you don't need those notes, you know, you're probably just rattling that stuff off and it becomes quite an automatic sort of autopilot thing for you. But, you know, we will still make notes on things that we know are specifically important to each couple. So the more experienced you come, the more experienced you come, things will become automatic. But again, to the same end that I'm saying, don't be so rigid that you will only stick to your list. Don't be too sure of yourself at the same time and think, yep, I know, that one, boom, got them. Just make sure that you are doing this not as on autopilot, so to speak. Make sure that you're still doing it with the couple in mind.
Yeah.
So even if you're at a point that you can get those stock shots banked, for me, you still take a glance back at those questionnaires, those notes that you've made during your consultation.
We do this every day, every wedding day. We'll review back through the questionnaire, won't we?
Absolutely, yeah. Once early on, I learned from an experience where I did get complacent and I thought it'll be okay, it'll be a nice steady day, this nice easy day, because I know the couple from a previous profession and I was on my own filming their day and she'd said to me, getting a clip of me and my granddad in the film is really important. So it gets to film delivery and she contacts me and says, are there any more clips of my granddad and I? And I had to come to you with my tail between my legs, so to speak, and say, can you look back through this raw footage for me? Because I'd forgotten that she'd said that, but when I looked back through the notes on the questionnaire, it was there. So I'd messed up. So not that I'd got complacent because I was so experienced and I just did
didn't turn the granddad cam on.
No,
Here, granddad, wear this GoPro.
Stop it. I'd taken for granted that I knew what I was doing here and I knew what was important to this couple, but I didn't. I messed up slightly. And I regret to this day, and that was my lesson learned. Thankfully, it came early on, but that's my lesson learned, that even though I feel confident and I feel like I'm professional in what I do, I'll always look back at, whether it's the questionnaire. Sometimes you make additional notes, don't you, from a call with a couple that go on a notes just on your phone. We're always looking back at that stuff. Make sure you understand what's important to each of those couples. And just as well, I'd put, just before you move on, that that's all leading up to and on the day, for on the day, but also know that that can be an opportunity for you in post as well. Yeah. So at the time, on the day, and particularly because you edit our films, if there's a moment that's passed, whether it's a day that we're working on it together but you weren't there, you were doing another part of the day, or whether it's a part of the day that I was a wedding I was doing myself, to have made a note at the time of something significant, it's important to be able to reflect back on that, because you're not editing. If they say that to you at the time, right. and then I didn't know that, and then you're letting me know. So even if you are filming it or photographing it yourself, just to remind you that they did tell me on the day, this is really important to me. Yeah. And so that you include that somewhere, whether it's in the gallery or it's in the film, even if because you might not think that it makes sense to put it in, or it matters. Absolutely, or that it shouldn't be included. Yeah. So like, so it could be something shouldn't be absolutely included. Yeah. There was a young child, a baby, who'd been adopted, and that couple were, it was wonderful to see this little one playing. But Hannah said to me towards the end of the night, she said, "Oh, can I just please don't include, don't put that in on anything that can be used socially." Yeah. So yeah, that's good. Cool. Right. Point number 4. Was setting up the camera and knowing your equipment. Now, this might sound really obvious, if you're a photographer or a videographer, sure, you should definitely know your equipment. But, and this isn't being critical, but we have worked alongside, people, other experienced photographers who've panicked mid-wedding because they've done something to the camera and they don't know how to undo it. So, like, they've changed the setting inadvertently and they don't know how to rectify it. Mm-hmm. And the old switch it on, switch it off ain't working. What do I do? I just switch it on, switch it off. Oh, it's not working. Shit. It's not a computer problem. Yeah. Sorry, I don't shoot on Nikon. They've wanted a certain type of shot because either the couple have requested it or they've thought, oh, well, there's something happening, fireworks or sparklers, and I'm not really sure how to set my camera up, how to adjust the settings to capture that as best as I can. And so, it's best to kind of sort that out before you're shooting stuff at a wedding. And it might sound obvious, but believe me, it's a fairly regular occurrence, is this. It's not just a one-off. And so, it's not a case of like, oh, we know everything, because we don't. But if we were going to be doing something at a wedding and we weren't sure how to do it, I'd definitely practice it beforehand. So if someone's asking you to do sparklers or fireworks and you've never done it before, just get some cheap sparkles and fireworks in garden and get your family to wave them around, practice taking photos or video of it, and see what happens. So that's kind of just, I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's something that I think there's so much that you have to be good at a wedding, in terms of like all of the different types of photography that you're going to be expected to do, from like potentially you're doing product photography, you're doing people photography and portraits, you're doing event photography, but you're doing event photography, live event, at the time during the day, and then you're doing event photography at night, which is two different things. So and then you might be doing like some kind of editorial type shots, and you might be doing some that are like more kind of documentary and unposed, and then you might be doing some where you've got to do something creative, and you want a particular effect. There's all these different things, and then obviously if you start doing video as well, it's the same. So if we're doing photo and video, there's a lot of things to learn and understand there, and you won't get it all straight away. But if there's something you've never done before, it's good to understand it. There's a lot expected of you, and you've got to understand a lot of different things. Whereas a portrait photographer, especially if they work in a studio, all they have to do is know studio lighting and
the cameras barely ever change settings in a studio. You know, you leave them on the same settings and it's just move the lights around. So it's a very different type of photography. Is you've got to know that studio stuff as well as like all this other stuff. Anyway, so that's sort of one thing. But also it's like learning your camera. And by learning the camera and where all the buttons are and how it works, because obviously if you switch camera systems or if you've got a new camera, it's going to take you a little bit of time, but do that outside of the wedding. Be confident with your camera settings so that you can focus on the people, focus on the creative side of capturing it. You're not worrying about like changing settings and moving and pressing buttons and all the rest. And where's this button and stuff like that. So on the modern cameras, you know, they're so customizable that ideally what you want is a way of working. And if you use more than one camera, you set them all up the same. That's what we've done. So all our cameras will pretty much have, unless they're different models, will have the same settings in the same place. You do the same thing to kind of get the results for a particular situation. So, you know, think about buttons to access settings easily, like your white balance, your frame rates, your focus modes, audio levels, things like that. You know, setting up profiles so that you can just literally switch between complete different profiles and they're already preset. Like on our cameras, we've got, you know, a dial at the top that's got 1, 2 and 3 on it. So 1, 2 and 3 are all different profiles. So we set 1 up for normal video shooting and 2 for slow-mo video shooting, and all the settings that go along with changing those, adjusting those things, they happen automatically when we change that dial. So we don't have to worry about it. It's all good to go as soon as we switch it from 1 to 2.
Just take that one step further. If you are a hybrid shooter as well, just think kind of how, and that's what we've kind of discovered over time, and it's been through trial and error, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, getting to know that setup of the camera to just make that ease between being able to switch between what the moment that you're filming, because if you're a solo shooter or if you're the only person that's with either the bride or the groom, for example, during prep, you want to not only be getting some video clips of that, but you want to be getting still images as well. So how can you quickly and efficiently switch between, and for hybrid shooters particularly, that I think that's...
Yeah, and you might literally want that same moment.
Yeah.
So you might want, you know, particular shot, you might want a photo of it, and you also might want a video clip of it. And so if you've got to mess around changing settings, that's not going to work. So you need to be able to very quickly press record and then stop record and then press the shutter. And obviously if the card's buffering and things like that, you that's outside of your control. But in every other situation, you just want to know that you can do it very quickly. And we have now set the cameras up, the newer cameras, we've set them up in such a way that we can just literally shoot and then press record and we go straight into video. We don't even have to change any settings just because of the way we've set the cameras up. And then when we are shooting just video, it's a bit different because we're doing it in a different way. We're more focused with that. So yeah, you need to kind of do stuff that saves you time, makes it more efficient, but also you want to feel confident when things are happening quickly. You know, you don't want to get flustered. So just know all this, have all this stuff mapped out prior to the wedding so that you, on the day, it's just second nature.
Yeah, cool. So number 4 there, that was to do, I guess, with all your equipment, but the equipment that you're holding right there. And then what's in addition to that? You're going to be thinking about flash and artificial light for your film and photos. So we've already covered light in a couple of episodes, so we're not going to discuss the general topic of that. But even if you prefer to sort of market yourself as a natural light photographer, using artificial light is sometimes unavoidable, especially with some of the venues that you will go to, just to be able to get a nice, fresh, decent looking image of the day. It's not about style necessarily and having more interesting or dynamic looking images, but just being able to adapt and deal with whatever situations you might be thrown into. As you've already mentioned, you know, you're dealing with a live event here, where the lighting and the conditions change numerous times throughout the day. We're not in a purpose-built studio here where all of these other elements are controlled, that we can control them. So, you know, it's a shame sometimes when we've worked alongside some photographers, and we will have had moments like this where we just didn't feel, you know, back in the beginning, didn't feel quite so comfortable and confident using artificial light or flash. You know, and you see people stressing sometimes about how dark a venue might be, or how yellow or green of a venue might appear, because ultimately they feel that their images are going to look really grainy when they come out, and that's the last thing you want, isn't it? You know, a compromise on the kind of quality of the images that you're delivering.
If you're thinking about that at the time you're taking them, and you're worrying about what's the quality going to be like? Yeah. It's going to affect your shooting. It's going to affect your vibe on the wedding day. Yeah, because you're going to be worried.
Yeah. You don't want that to be the case. It's just going to be easier when you're in a position where you feel more comfortable, more confident with those additional tools, if you like, flash and artificial light. So in addition to understanding your camera settings, think about the use of flash and artificial light then, and get a bit of practice in with those. And particularly now here, we're mid-October, and so the nights are well and truly closing in. So you're going to be, if you're still shooting weddings over the next few months, you're obviously going to see the change in how many daylight hours you've got. Naturally, the light that you're going to get, you know, we're going to be dealing with the really bright, harsh sunshine. We're going to be potentially dealing with during the day quite overcast, grey, flat looking and thinking,
I've only got a short time left of light, and I haven't managed to get this and this yet. You know, maybe you haven't done the group shots. Maybe you're going to have to do the group shots using artificial light, because there just isn't going to be enough by the time you get to them, depending, you know, what time you're going to do them, ceremony and stuff. So, you know, imagine worrying about that. Like, how am I going to do the group shots? And I don't use flash. I don't know how to do it. There's no point in leaving yourself in that thing where you're stressing about it. It's better just to kind of accept that it's part of the job. It might not be your style. It might not be your go-to. You know, if I can do them in natural light, if I can shoot the whole day in natural light, let's do it. But if you can, knowing that you can do that is just going to make you a much confident wedding photographer. And we're saying this from experience. Yeah. Lindsay's still kind of trying to learn kind of more about flash and using it, and you know, still at the moment, like I would say, if you're going to be using it, I will kind of give you I will do a couple of test shots, and I'll say, right, this is how you set the camera up, and if you need to change the exposure, just do this or this. You know, you don't understand it inside and out, and that's something that you're kind of developing. Fortunately, you don't have to kind of worry about that too much, because I kind of do most of the shooting, the photo shooting, when it comes to like the groups and things like that, and the night do. But you know, it's just good to develop that side if you're not confident with it, even if it's not something you intend on using. The wedding I did just gone Saturday, I pretty much used flash the entire day. It was at a venue where there's no windows, so it's basically an old warehouse building that's been converted into a wedding venue, and there isn't, once they shut the entrance doors, which they do during the whole ceremony and, well, pretty much most of the day, once they shut those doors, there's no natural light in there whatsoever. And it's all tungsten, sort of nice Edison bulb, yellowy light, and brick. And because we've shot there before, I know that if you don't sort of know what you're doing in those conditions and you don't use flash, you will get some really shit looking pictures, some grainy pictures. So you really need to be able to work around that. Yeah. Which brings us nicely on to, and I'll just cover it quickly, number 6 is understanding light, colour and white balance. So again, I'm not going to go through all the details, because we've probably, I think we've covered this in the lighting thing, in the lighting podcast. But just having an understanding of how light colour works for different locations is the key to kind of confidence. So on the day, you know, when you're capturing things, that they're going to look the way that you intended them to look after the day. Now, you could just sort this by using auto white balance, especially if you're doing photography and not film. But setting the white balance manually, and there's lots of different ways you can do that in your camera, will make your workflow after the wedding more streamlined. And specifically, if you are a video shooter, it's so hard to kind of adjust your white balance in post if it's way off. It's okay if it's near enough. These days you can tweak it a little bit, but if it's way off, your footage is not going to look very good. So you really need to kind of have an understanding of this. And we used auto white balance for a long time, first few years of shooting. And it's not that I would never use auto white balance. I think there's definitely a time and a place, but I also think that understanding how light's going to react in different conditions is really important, and it just makes you a more confident shooter. It's going to make your workflow much better. Yeah. So that does sort of fit into the next bit, which is number 7, which is focusing on the details. Now, we don't literally mean details as in, the accessories and the dress and the shoes. We mean we need to think about like the details of when you're shooting, the location, the conditions of when you're shooting. So you don't want something to ruin your edit or slow your workflow down later because there was something in there that you didn't see or you didn't think of. So once you don't have anything to think about in terms of like technical and the lighting, because you've worked on those things that we've already discussed and they're second nature to you, and you feel like you can communicate on the wedding day without too much effort, so you can sort of chat and you can direct things as required, then you can really start to think about your composition a little more and making things look interesting, but also making sure there isn't something that's messing that up. So after 5 years, it's still hit and miss for us. We don't always get this right. We don't nail it on every time, because sometimes you're like too distracted or flustered to focus on like tiny little things, and I'll explain in a second. And sometimes that you're well aware of these details and there's nothing you can really do about it, because it might be the ceremony or like, the speeches or something like that, or where the dance floor is. And you might be like, this isn't going to work for the photos or video. It's going to look shit. Imagine like a massive thing of windows behind where the couple are getting married and the sun is coming through the windows, right? For some reason, lots of venues like to do this. And we all complain about it. We all go, why on earth do they get them married there? Like, they have no idea what that's going to look like on the photos
your top
and video.
Table in front of them. So for your speeches, right in front of the huge windows as well.
It's just one of them things, isn't it? And we have to deal with that, and there's nothing we can do about that. But there are things during the day that we can do. So imagine turning off lights where possible to avoid mixed light. I'm thinking things like prep or portraits. It's not always possible, but where you can, that's great. You might want to think about the audio. So if you're doing video and you might want to use the audio, imagine someone's doing a reading, or, a letter or something like that, and the noise pollution from the TV or the music that they've got playing, that's going to mess that up for you. You're not going to be able to use that. Hairdryers, fans, kids. So we're thinking more of prep, obviously, at that point. And, if you can, move people if it's going to make for better lighting and composition for your images and your video shots. In prep, obviously for a ceremony, things like that, you can't be saying, hold on a minute. Hold on. No, she's walked down aisle, but it's in the wrong spot. Right, come over here.
Yeah, any reason why these two may not be joining my trip? Yes, right here. Let's run that again.
Lighting shit, people. Wait, let's reverse it. Everybody spin your chairs round. We're going to go other end of the room.
Everybody out. Start it again. Other end of the room, yeah.
Can you walk other way, love? Because light's much better at that end. You can't do anything about that. Literally don't sweat that. If they've chosen to get married there, even if they understood any of this stuff, which they won't probably, it ain't your freaking problem. You can't do anything about that. But you can do stuff where it's like, controllable environments like prep. So if they're doing the makeup and hair in a particular location and you really, really can't work with it, just let them finish and then say, look, can we just do a little fake shot in this little spot here, because this is going to look awesome for photos and video. And unless you've got a really shitty makeup artist or hair person, or unless unless like the couple are really like, they're not comfortable in front of the camera, and hopefully they've hired you for a reason, so they'll trust you and they'll go with it. Just do it. Just be be the expert. Tell them what's going to get the best results. And then if they don't do it and you don't get the best results, they can't blame you for it. And you can sort of sleep easy knowing that there's nothing more you could have done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, cool. Number 8 then. Plan the day. Be prepared. Anticipate things. And have contingencies. Like restarting the ceremony, if you know.
Whoa.
Hold on. So let's think then. So you may have already done a little bit of research into the venue or venues that you're going to be working at the day. So you might have used Google Maps, for instance, images of the place, be that from the website of the actual venue or be it from Google Images or something similar, so that you can look at past wedding images that have been captured there. You might even look at other professionals' blogs and things like that. If it's a new venue, however, or you do have prior knowledge of it, and you've been there before, that's all good in equipping you for kind of thinking, right, I'm well researched, well versed in what I'm going to be faced with when I get there, or I've been here before, I know what it's going to be like. But even still, we would say approach with caution, because every single day is different. Okay, and even if you've done 2 weddings that summer in that venue, I guarantee you the conditions will be slightly different. So please don't take for granted that even though you've done your homework on it, that things are going to be exactly the same, because that's when we get complacent. Yeah, and we can make mistakes.
And it comes and bites you on the ass.
Yeah. So on the morning of the actual wedding, when you arrive at the venue or venues, have a little walk around, do your own little recce of what's going on there. Locate the relevant rooms that you're going to be working in throughout the day and any other spaces around that particular venue as well. You can do clever things like, use the compass.
I love using the compass.
I know you love compass.
And that sundial effort as well, that one that tells you what time sun's going to set and where and stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. So not only is that important for photographers, but videographers equally, because if you want a nice sunset shot, or you just want to know that you can have a little bit of time with your couple before the light disappears completely, again, be armed with that sort of information.
So it's also, the compass thing. So what I do is I'm looking at where the sun's going to move, so that then, I'm aware of where it's going to be for the group shots. I'm aware where it's going to be for the ceremony, because maybe the ceremony's outside, or maybe it's, in front of one of them crazy windows we just mentioned. So if you walk into the ceremony room and it's coming through the windows and they're stood in front of the windows and you're like, oh shit, right? And you've got like 10 minutes to kind of think, what am I going to do here to make this look better? That's a thing. But if in the morning, I know the sun is there, it's now moving there, it's going to be in this direction, it's going to be shining right through them windows. If you know that like 2 or 3 hours before the ceremony, then you can kind of think about it, you come up with a little plan. Same with the sunset stuff. Maybe you think, the sunset's at this time, but actually, because you're in a valley and there's a massive hill and a load of trees, the sun's actually going to be behind those trees way earlier than you think. So
you are awesome,
Sorry, I'm not.
No, you are.
This is just.
I didn't even know you did that. So you can tell that I'm always in like bridal prep or with and meanwhile Jules he's getting all the establishing stuff, and you're with the compass and you're working all this stuff out, and it's so methodical and well thought out. You are awesome.
It looks more maverick on the day, I promise you.
Don't be trying to just keep it on brand that you're a maverick when really it's planned to a T. Anyway, you're awesome. So, in addition then to what Jules has just been saying, so as you are walking around the venue and you're kind of considering the different physical aspects of this particular location, you're thinking about the amount of light you're going to have and things like that. Take photographs on your own phone. Get your phone out, have a look at, if you think, that might be quite a nice spot for some couples portraits, or that might be really good for group photos. just in case we can make notes on our phone as we've already talked about, but actually so that you can see what it's going to look like, and it's a good reminder for you to come back to it. Get your phone out and take some photos yourself. Consider the different parts of the day and what the light is likely to be doing, in so much as thinking about your contingencies. Okay, so
I just mentioned a bit of that, didn't I?
Yeah. So as you just said, you understand that, okay, in terms of the light, we can look at what the weather forecast is going to be like. We can look at how much light we're going to have through the day. But, what if that all goes pear-shaped? And actually, because our weather reading and map reading isn't straight out of a Formula One team... What if the heavens do open and it starts chucking it down and you just weren't expecting it? So goodbye to your, as the sun is setting, couples walk down the driveway to go and get that. What's your contingency? What are you going to do in that circumstance?
Panic.
So always just be thinking, please, if you are thinking of doing something outdoors, and as we talked about, the time of year that we're now getting to, the likelihood is that, the weather or the light, perhaps something unforeseen is going to come along. So just please, when you are making your plans, don't be so rigid in it. Think about a little bit of a backup. All right. Communicate that with your couple also, so that you are just reinforcing with them the confidence that they can have in you, that you not only know your kit, know what you're doing, but you know how to get the best out of the images that you're going to take with them. You know how to get the best out of them with a couple, because as you know, we sometimes get nervous couples, don't we? And we get couples that aren't so confident in front of the camera. Yeah. So the last thing that you want to be kind of compounding a nervous couple is the fact that you walk them to the door to take them outside for some sunset shots and it's chucking it down, and then the look of panic on your face is just not going to reinforce the confidence that they need to have in you. So that's why it's good just to be able to communicate with them that, maybe they've just finished the wedding breakfast and they're ready for some more shots. So you go, right, we'll head outside and da-da-da. But actually, if it's not so great when we get out there, what I thought is we'll go to this position because this is slightly undercover and it's not too cold for you either.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. You've
just demonstrated to them that you are professional, you are proactive, and you're considering their needs as well.
Awesome.
Last point, have with you things like waterproof bags for your equipment,
so that's like
umbrellas.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, it's okay. So umbrellas, things like that, so that actually, if you're on your way outside and you see that it started to rain, maybe the way around that is not necessarily to find a different spot, but maybe quick thinking, because you know your kit so well, you've got a couple of umbrellas with you, but you know also that you've got a stand and you've got an off-camera flash that you can take outside with you, and you could maybe do something a little bit different out in the rain still.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a couple of general points that I also wanted to just make on the whole contingencies and things like that. And these are more kind of just little things that we might do on the day. So, for instance, I've always got an extra battery in my pocket. And this might sound like an obvious thing to do, but if for many years, we would just keep our batteries. I would keep my batteries in the bag, and then I'd be like, all of a sudden, I'd be in the middle of a portrait session. Like I'd be doing the video, for instance, and when you're doing video, the batteries get chewed up super quick, especially if you're like shooting in really high res and high frame rate and things. And you'd go on a walk with the photographer and the couple, and you'd end up, because you are not planning it, the photographer would end up taking you miles away from your bag, and then you'd be like, holy shit. It'd be like 10% on your battery or something, and you'd be watching it like run down, and they'd be doing all this awesome stuff and you'd have this awesome sunset, and you'd be like, oh my God, I haven't got a battery. My battery's running down. And like you'd be switching your camera on and off constantly, like trying to save a little bit of battery so that if something else happened that was really cool, you'd still be able to get it. And, so yeah, I literally now always have at least one battery in my pocket the whole day, so I always have like a fresh one in case like it goes mid-ceremony and my bag's like at the other side of the room or something, or if we go out for a walk, you know, I'm in prep and I've left my bag, you know, in the car or something, you know, you're probably going to have your bag fairly close to you the whole time. I wouldn't suggest you just leave your gear lying around, but there might be situations where you don't bring your batteries, so I always have them in my pocket. It's pretty obvious stuff, but I don't reckon everybody does that.
No, but that's why I like wearing my blazers.
Because you've got pockets.
Because I've got pockets.
Yeah, but wearing a blazer in like 40-degree heat is a bit, you know, daft, isn't it? You've got a couple of dresses now, haven't you, with pockets in?
Yeah, with some pockets in, which has been nice this summer. Yeah, that's been good. Yeah, because ladies, we can't carry as much in our pockets as you blokes manage to. Phone, batteries. But still, it's, you know,
can't wear a dress.
Big bulging
pockets. If I could
pockets.
get away with a nice comfy dress in heat, I would do. Right, anyway.
You know, lip balm and comb and everything to...
All the essentials, yeah. I'm always using my comb during wedding day. So think about other equipment. You know, like what about lenses? Same as like with the battery. You know, think about if you might need a different lens for something, but you leave it in the car or leave it in the bag or whatever. Or what about your flash? Like I always think, you know, you could be doing something. You could be like, I'm definitely outside here, taking photos outside, and all of a sudden someone goes, oh, could you just come and take one inside here? And you don't have your flash on. And you're thinking, I'm going to have to like put the ISO up to about 10,000 here. It'd be much better if I had the flash. So, you know, these are like things to kind of think about. And for video, you know, it's like move stuff in advance. Think about end of a ceremony, you've got your tripods up and stuff, and maybe this reception's in another room. Well, rather than like packing everything down, we just typically will move, not with the cameras, we'll take the cameras off, but we'll move the actual tripods and stuff into the reception room so that we're ready for the entrance and the speeches, and then we're not like kind of having to worry about it and react. If we end up with like not enough time to set up for that, we've already got the tripods in place. So that's kind of that. Maybe like a little audio recorder, always have one of those maybe in your pocket if you don't have your bag on you constantly, just in case someone does an impromptu reading a letter or something like that. You've got your recorder there to do it. Right, number 9.
Home straight.
No stress group shots for photographers. So it sounds like a ridiculous level of detail to go into for you, but I can't ever remember seeing, you know, I have looked at lots of different education over the years to kind of understand how I could make improvements to what I do. And I don't remember ever seeing someone go through group shots and how to take really good ones. I've seen bits on snippets on, you know, tips, but nothing.
Snippets on bits on tips on snippets.
I'm talking like an idiot right now. So for anybody who understood that, that's a tip in on a snippet. Right. Anyway, I can't remember seeing anyone go through on how to take group shots in a really simple way. So I'm going to just do that now. For some reason, like what we find, because we work alongside other photographers, is that photographers generally don't like taking group shots. And it seems most of them anyway, not every single one, but it seems to be the most like stressful part of the day for them, or the bit that, and I think because we did video before we did photo and we used to see photographers doing this, I think it used to make me, or when we first started doing photo, it made me feel like that about it. I think I was like, oh, I don't like doing group shots. I'm not going to enjoy doing the group shots. And now I don't mind doing them because we've got like a bit of a way of doing it. And I kind of think, well, actually, it's the only time they're going to get all those people together. It's a really important thing. It's the only time they get all the family and friends in one place. So getting these, like, you know, legacy memories, these things, these heirlooms, if you like, it's the only time they're likely to be able to do it. So it's really important, group shots. It's one of the most important things about the day, inadvertently. Obviously, people might not think it is, but it is really when you think about, like, history and having that document of people being together. So here we go. I'm going to go through it. I'm just going to read the notes I put. So we encourage a simple list with a couple. So we have pre-formulated list that we send out, and then they can add extra ones if they want. And what we do is we suggest that if they don't have loads of additional shots, we'll be able to get these in like 15 to 20 minutes max. Even if they've got like grandparents with mobility issues and things like that, because of the way that we'll kind of do it. So what we stick to is we try to encourage them to stick to parents, siblings, wider family, bridal party. And obviously they're all going to be on separate photos, but we try and do that. And obviously if you want a large group shot, we'll try and get that. And typically how we'll do that is if there isn't anywhere where we can get that's in decent light, where we can get some height to shoot down, we will use the drone for that. And I'm not going to go into that now, but that's kind of how we usually do it. And what we suggest is if they're wanting like loads of little ones, like with different people, like can I have one with this mate, and can I have one with this friend, and can I have one with, cousin 10 times removed who lives in wherever, we say like we'll do those throughout the day. If you just come and grab us at some point, and we'll get one of those at some other point, rather than cramming them all into that like time in the drinks reception. So we aim to get them done as quick as possible, and we aim to do it straight after the ceremony if possible, so that the guests don't start drinking and talking and stuff like that, because then it's really makes it more difficult. So we try to find a spot where we're not with people in the background, but also where we're not too far away from where everybody is after the ceremony. So like usually as close to where people are going to be gathered for that like drinks reception bit. And it's best if the venue's not too spread out, because obviously if it's spread out, you've got loads of different rooms, or like, you've got to walk from this place to this place, like the bar's in one place, and then you've got to walk hundreds of meters to get to where everyone's going to be stood and stuff. That makes it a little bit more difficult. So it's about thinking about location. And then we choose the right spot for the group. We're looking for even light, preferably shade if it's sunny. And we want it to be large enough to fit everyone in with nothing too distracting in the background. So we're looking for maybe a wall or maybe a bush that isn't, it's nice to have a little bit of colour in the background, isn't it? But we don't want something that's like, we don't want like loads of different things in the background that might be distracting or we might have to take out. And you want to be confident in communicating this with a couple, because a couple might be like, well, I really want the group shot here. And you have to kind of say, look, I don't think it's going to work with the light, because, everyone's going to have like a massive shadow down the face if we do it here. And if they insist, then you leave it on their toes, but you be confident about it. Because I've seen some photographers where they haven't felt confident enough to sort of say, no, that's not a good idea. And then they've been worried about the photos and how they're going to look for the group shots because they didn't speak up and say something to the couple. Take a few minutes if you need to prepare. Move any like stuff, any shit that's on the ground or in the background out of the way. Think about like tables and bottles on tables and things like that out of the way in the background. And consider what you're going to do if the light starts changing, because obviously you might look at it now and the sun's behind a cloud, and then if it comes out of the cloud, what's it going to do? Is it going to ruin the shot? So think about that and think about if there's something you can do if you can change the location. And then what you want to do is try and have a little holding area where people can stand close by that are waiting to have the photo taken next, so that you've got this little kind of conveyor belt system coming up. Get a helper, appoint a member of the wedding party, a groomsman, a bridesmaid, or somebody else. Maybe if you've got a wedding planner, they might help with this, if you're lucky. And get those settings nailed in and don't change them, because then it's going to make your editing easier for these photos. So, get the exposure right, set it to a low burst mode. You want kind of a smaller group. You want it to be a minimum of like an aperture of f5. Your larger groups, probably f9 to f11 or upwards if you've got lots and lots of people and with lots and lots of rows. This is just to make sure everybody's in focus and you're not going to be worrying about it. And then, you want to basically know that you're just going to you're going to point the camera, you're going to pull the shutter. I was going to say trigger then. You're going to point the shutter and it's just going to and they're all going to be the same, and then they're going to be easy to edit, and you're not messing around going up and down with the exposure and stuff like that. Make sure you remove sunglasses. Men's, get them relaxed, hands in pocket if they're not comfortable by the side. Women, downside of the legs, or,
kind of with flowers and things, it's good to have about hip height is a good kind of...
So I just got distracted because I thought the camera stopped recording, but that's okay. Down the side of the or if
about kind of hip height.
Or if they've got flowers, then that's cool. Get them tight together. everybody looking at your camera, because there might be a videographer camera there might be a second shooter camera, so make sure everyone looking at this one, it's okay to keep reiterating the same instructions if it kind of gets things done. And remember, like, you know, smile. I hate using the word cheese. I hate saying say cheese, but, you know, people might use that, but that's fine. I always just say, look, come on, best smiles, looking this way. You know, you sound like a dick, you feel like a dick, but it's what's got to be done. And by doing it quick, you know, you're going to make them happy. You're going to make everybody be like, oh, that wasn't as painful, because people just generally don't like having a photo taken, do they?
No.
And then what I tend to do is just do a quick burst, landscape wide, zoom in, because I'll have a little zoom lens, quick burst, landscape tighter, so like just kind of waist up, head, so it's like, because that's the one that I'm going to put on the wall if it's me, you know, the one where I can actually see. Don't really want to see people's feet and stuff, but if I can see people's faces, and then a quick burst on a portrait. And the reason for doing this is then if you're going to create an album or something later on, you've got all those options there. You're not trying to crop something out of what you've got. You can just, you've got a few options, and you're making sure as well by taking them on a burst mode that you're going to get people with their eyes open. Because even now, you could take 10 photos of like the same shot, and you still see occasionally there's somebody doesn't look right on all of them. You know, there's like one person who's closed their eyes on all of them.
Yeah. I always feel for brides or bridesmaids when they've decided to have their hair back and they've got strands. They've got 2 strands in their face. And so you've always got, at some point, somebody's always got hair stuck to the lips, or the wind's blowing it across the face and things like that. So like you say, burst mode, absolutely. So at least you can get quite a number of them, and just hope for a break in when it's settled by the side of their face.
Absolutely. So yeah, get them done super quick. Don't mess around. Everybody's happy. You'll look like a superstar.
Because that's the thing as well. You know, you even hear it being commented upon. You know, the smoother and the quicker group shots go, it's definitely appreciated by guests. It's definitely appreciated by your couples as well. Okay, here we are, number 10. Ooh, shoot with variety and think about perspective. So don't just go where the action is and feel like you need to just be, to use a word you didn't want to use, trigger happy. Is that okay to use that?
I didn't want to use the word trigger. I just didn't want it to sound like I was shooting people.
Yeah. So don't just,
fine,
but okay, in the context of it, don't just feel like you have to be constantly snapping because something is happening. Obviously, we don't want to be missing out on any key moments and things that are taking place right in front of us. But with your key moments, take a moment to actually have a look around too and think about how you want to present this moment to your couples. So how can you present something in a more interesting and kind of story-driven way? So the last thing you want is to be looking back at tens and tens of images, which is just all over the room. But there's nothing really, there's nothing really meaningful. There's nothing really kind of story-driven that's behind that and a little bit more interesting or insightful. So think about the perspective in which you're taking it from and thinking about variety. So, for example, shoot at different heights. You've talked about focal lengths there with the group shots. Different focal lengths, absolutely. Shoot at different heights, with kids. Think about on the dance floor at the night time, a little bit lower down for what they're doing. That's a nice kind of perspective to get. Different angles as well. I love to shoot through stuff, whether that's on still images or with the video as well. Think about different things that are in the foreground, think in the background as well. Just kind of mix it up. Just don't settle for a standard, a very kind of flat image.
Yeah, and everything's shot at the same, sort of from eye level, and everything is like at that one angle, one focal length.
Yeah.
Mix it up and think about how you can show things in different ways. So you could show the same thing, but you could show it from 3 or 4 different perspectives.
Yeah. absolutely. Yeah. If you're going to, for example, shoot quite tight and allow for a shallow depth of field, do that more so, or you might have chosen to do something like that if you're in a particularly bad location, or if there's things that aren't so attractive in the background. You know, it's okay. It's like I can't remember who done it now, but a photographer on Instagram yesterday had shown on a little bit of a carousel. It basically shown this portrait shot that it was taken of a couple, and it was outside a building with like a cream wall to this building outside, and just to the right hand side of the couple there's the drain pipe running down into, and then there's dustbins next to it basically. So this was quite a small and intimate wedding that I think where it was just at a pub was the reception, but this photographer's tried to think sort of outside the box and just consider the fact that okay, I'm not going to get the gorgeous landscape photographs here, but do you know what, it might be a plain background, but here's what it looks like from a wider perspective where everything's in focus, including the dustbins and the drain pipe next to it. But here's the finished article. And so the next image that you swiped along to was, here's what this couple look like, because I've shot the image tight. It's got a nice shallow depth of field, and it's actually quite a dreamy looking shot of the two of them.
Yep.
Okay, so consider what your options are. If it's not some picturesque hillside or stately manor, don't worry about that. This is where you will be at your best, where you're thinking creatively, thinking on your toes. Also try to get lots of shots of different people in your photos and your film, because we've talked about and highlighted already that, you know, you just never quite know when someone might get to look back on that last image or that last clip of a really important family member or friend or guest that was at the wedding. But also, in the brief with the couple, in that conversation with the couple, you might have had a couple that have said to you, it's really important for us to see not just photos of us and film of us all day, but we want to see people. Yeah, we want to see everybody enjoying our day. We've invested a lot into this, and so we want to see what it means to other people as well.
Yep.
So with candid shots, you know, sometimes just finding a spot that you can kind of work with, as I mentioned. Think about your camera settings, how you're going to sort of point and frame the shot that you're going to take. Just kind of move around with your eyes a little bit before you decide on a definite, you know, take some little test shots.
I mean, I'll just literally, I won't even look at the screen. I'll be looking at people. So I've already got all the camera settings, how I want it for the lighting and everything. And I know all I have to do is point and press. Yeah. So I'm just literally going to point the camera in the right direction and press.
Yeah. And it's not just a case of when you've got somebody posed in a particular position, you know, because it's candid shots, because action's ongoing, things are happening all the time. You might actually like to look at that group of people or that group of kids that are playing over in the corner. What's it look like here? But then move around the room a little bit, see what it looks like from a different angle
and
as well.
And wait for that moment as well.
Yeah, preempt.
So waiting, you know that something's going to happen, but you're just waiting to pull the shutter, just so that you're not taking like 40, 50 photos of something that you're never going to use, but just hang on and wait for that one moment that you know is likely to happen.
Yeah.
You know, wait for that person to do the big belly laugh, wait for the Jenga tower to fall over, wait for, you know, someone to come and take something off the plate, or you know, because in video, to show like people, I don't show people eating, but I like to show that people were enjoying the food and the drink. So picking up a glass of champagne, picking up a canapé off a fancy tray or whatever, those things work really well in film if you capture those bits, not the putting it in the gob, but the bit where they're picking it off the tray, and it works really well. So I'm looking for that. I literally will follow someone round as they're walking around with the tray and wait for someone to take it off, and that's when I press record.
Yeah, it could works equally well for sort of drinks and things like that as well, doesn't it? Sometimes because you know, not in a creepy way, but you know, sort of hanging out around the bar a little bit sometimes as well. So you might just get people
shots or
that's
something,
it, and then you want that reaction. That comes afterwards. Yeah. Bonus time. Right,
so we've done our 10 points, quick bonus one. So really sort of quick and simple. Be super nice. So approach people, introduce yourself, think about, obviously the couple, but their family, the vicar, the registrar, venue coordinator, other people involved in the wedding. Be kind, polite, and relaxed. So, help people, be helpful, inform, advise, don't be bossy. Become the helper, become the go-to. They want your view. What would work best? What do you think? Right? You want them to be asking you. And if you need to get something done to get the best result, I just need you to do this really slow, or just give me a couple of minutes, or it'd be better if you stood over here rather than over here, or it'd be better if you went first, right? If you're doing these things, if you're being super nice, people will, respond by being super nice back, and they will respect you. They'll respect that you have done this hundreds of times potentially before. Maybe if you're starting out, but and they will respect that, and they will help you get what you need, because that's what they want. That's what they've hired you for. Lindsay even says bye to half of the bridal party and parents and stuff at most weddings, because she wants to kind of remain, keep that good impression on the way out, don't you? And make sure
leave them with
a good impression,
a nice kind of good impression, and
and then before they've even seen the work that you've delivered to them, you're already halfway there in terms of them being more than happy. So we hope. I had to do that little manual, just press the button because I'm too far away from it.
We need a stick.
Or maybe just move stuff around so it's a bit closer to it.
Get a longer cable.
We hope this has been helpful. It's not one of those kind of sexy technical topics. It's quite a technical. In fact, that's from last week. It's not a technical topic at all. It's not one of those topics where it's we've given you 10 tips. It's been very broad, the stuff we've been talking about. But hopefully, if you follow these things, it's going to actually give you a much better preparation, and then a much better experience on the day for you, but also for the couple and the people you're working with. The main thing is, from my perspective, at a wedding, you want to feel relaxed, and you feel relaxed when you feel confident, and you feel confident when you're prepared and you know what you're fucking doing. Yeah. So if you've found something useful on this, if you've enjoyed the podcast or any of the other podcasts, please rate and review us wherever you listen to your podcast, and share the podcast with anybody who you think might it be useful for. Yeah.
As usual, if you have any comments, please share those with us. Any opinions or topic suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. So please DM us on Instagram at Wedding Mavericks. Thank you all for listening and watching this week. It's good to have been back, done this again this week. You all have a good week, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Take care. Bye.
See you later, everybody.